In today's episode of Beyond HR, you will join us for an inspiring conversation that shines a spotlight on the unsung heroes of every organization, HR professionals. We will explore how HR not only supports business success, but also champions the flourishing of every individual through caring, connecting, creating, and celebrating. We will discover practical ways HR can foster environments where people can thrive and learn why your own well-being as an HR leader is essential to the collective success. Let's acknowledge the vital role of HR and celebrate the transformative power of human-centered workplaces. Welcome to Beyond HR, the podcast for people-first leaders who know that HR is about more than checklists and compliance. I'm Paige, your co-host, and we will explore the real challenges shaping today's workplaces. From burnout and belonging to strategy and storytelling, we're bringing you honest conversations, practical insights, and a fresh take on what it means to lead with heart in the world of work. Before we dive into our episode, here's a quick word from our launch sponsor.
If you're feeling stretched thin, juggling big changes, emotional labor, and communication breakdowns, you're not alone. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Kaplan, founder of Bring Disc to Life, an online community for aspiring leaders and HR professionals. We give you the strategies, tools, and encouragement to communicate in ways that increase your influence while lowering your stress. Using DISC, the 5 behaviors, and mindfulness, you'll learn to stay grounded, read minds, and frame your message to influence others. We have live workshops every month, group coaching to unpack tough situations, and tons of easy-to-use scripts, strategies, and resources that you can apply right away without adding more to your plate. So come refuel with a community that gets you and wants to help you speak your truth in a way that's heard. Join us at confidentcommunicator.com and click on community. That's confidentcommunicator.com. Lead yourself and others will follow.
Dr. Joseph Zagerman, Dr. Joe for short, Assistant Professor of Business Administration and Program Lead. Dr. Joe is a passionate professor, corporate trainer, and growth enthusiast known for blending humor, heart, and practical wisdom in the classroom. He sees education as a calling to empower others and is famous for making a positive impact wherever he goes. When he's not inspiring students, you will find him doting on his long-haired dachshund or playing guitar. Relatable, engaging, and unforgettable, Dr. Joe is on a mission to help others unlock their potential and create lasting change with a smile. So let's dive in. Welcome, Dr. Joe.
Paige and Will, thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest on the Beyond HR podcast. I am honored and I'm humbled to be here. Thank you so very much.
Yeah, we're really excited to dive in today. I know when we connected, you always find those people that you just really connect with. Mm-hmm. And, I always give this shout out. It's so funny, but Allison Jones, she was the one that connected us. And I keep going back to her for some reason. But I feel like, you're kind of one and the same. So Dr. Joe, who would you say you are at your core and what fuels your passion for the work that you do?
Well, that's really a good question here. And I've got to tell you, I am blessed far more than I deserve. I'm centered with just making a positive difference in the lives of my learners. I've spent, I'm on my 26th year of being a college professor, and I've been involved in corporate training and development even longer than that. So being able to make that positive difference in people's lives, helping them to find what lies beyond their best just means so much to me. And, over the course of my career, I have worked with thousands of learners. And by the way, you mentioned Allison's name, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention, but one of the initiatives, Allison and I right now are working on co-authoring a book, which will be out in the first quarter of 26. So we will keep you guys informed so that your listeners will also know when that's going to be ready.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. We would love to hear about it. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dr. Joe. Who do you think you are at your core?
That's really a good question. And at my core, I would definitely say that I'm a servant leader. Mm-hmm. And if I may just beg your indulgence, my academic background, my undergraduate degree is in organizational behavior. My MBA is in management, and my doctorate is from the University of New England, where it's in educational leadership with a focus on transformative leadership. And, you know, to me, knowledge is not just power, knowledge is understanding. And I truly enjoy helping my learners with their journey to find what lies beyond their best. And that's who I am at my core. You know, a servant leader, someone who's just willing to make a difference in the lives of others.
Yeah, and how would you say that translates itself in how you find ways of helping folks find that same core in their own path in their own way?
You know, a truth that I have found over the years is learners might forget course content, but they'll never forget the quality of your character. And a truth that I have found, and this has served me extremely well. People don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. And when you center around that focus, people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. That really sets the tone.
That is true.
That is very true. So, kind of going all the way back, if you can think about it, what led you to do the work that you actually do now? Because, you know that you're a servant leader now, right? You're a professor.
Right.
But kind of what led you to that? Because clearly that's not something you were born with, right?
That's a very good point. You know, students will often ask me, you know, what should I be pursuing for a career or a vocation? And I always tell others, I suggest the following. I say, write down your accomplishments that you're most proud of, whether you got paid for them or not. It could be volunteer work, it could be anything. And after you create this list, common themes will begin to purpose, or will begin to surface, I should say. And when you do that, my list of common themes: being of service to others, helping people to find what lies beyond their best, being a mentor. Those are the things that tend to that leads to my being. And you were talking about the journey itself, and uh, I must say, there's a man does not become a man till his father passes away. And I never knew how true that was until my own life. I was always a very good student, always a top student. And I remember my first year of college, I just wasn't motivated, did very well. And I decided I'm going to leave college after my first year, find myself, and move down to Dallas, where my oldest sister lives. And unfortunately, my father became very ill, underwent an artery bypass operation, and never made it out of the hospital, suffered 3 strokes. And I came back home, to be with my mom. I'm the only boy in the family, the baby in the family, and I have 3 older sisters. And one of my sisters had said to me, Joe, now is the defining moment. You are very, very smart. Find your path, get back into school. And I realized at that point in time, that's where I needed to be. And then all those other principles came into place. Some of the proudest accomplishments I had while being in school is earning the Servant Leader Award when I was studying at Eastern University, being selected as class rep. Those were really meaningful awards and acknowledgments that I received, and it really pretty much set the tone in terms of my journey in helping others.
Now, obviously, to your statement you just said about you don't truly turn to a man until your father passes away. Hopefully, we're able to figure that out well before that.
Sure.
How would you say that an individual, man or female, can unlock that potential within themselves to be able to get to that mindset in that space of how they move and operate in the world, hopefully before their parents pass?
That's one we really have to unpack here. And if I may, because this is a podcast for HR professionals, let us all just give some applause. Three. 1, 2, 3. Let's just give some applause for all the HR folks that are out there.
Yeah.
Because in answer to your question, HR's role is all about human flourishing. What they do is they're the architects of workplace well-being. They create environments where, for talent to thrive, and then they measure what matters. And so we just need to level set here. And I mentioned human flourishing. So in a nutshell, Human flourishing is simply the science of well-being. It's beyond survival. It's to our own personal thriving. It's what lies beyond our best. And Seligman writes, it's really the synergy of positive emotions, engagement, meaningful relationships, having meaning or purpose in our life, and of course, accomplishment or achievement. I have parsed, in answer to your question, and I know it's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I have parsed human flourishing into 4 dimensions of care, connect, create, and celebrate. And so to get back to your question, I was alluding to a man does not become a man till his father dies.
Yeah.
I didn't mean that really. I meant that not necessarily literally, more,
No.
more figuratively. I grew up, when my dad passed away. But in terms of how do people, particularly HR professionals or people working in organizations, how do you actually embody this whole concept of human flourishing? And it has to start with care. Even though human resource professionals, they really are the embodiment of the concept of altruistic egoism. In other words, when you take care of the needs of others, you ultimately take care of yourself. But it is important to take care of yourself first. So the first cornerstone and to accomplish this, Will, is that of care. And when I speak of care, I'm talking about nurturing your self-compassion through mental and physical health. And the dimensions of that, firstly, is gratitude. And, I start my day with gratitude. I mentioned before, I'm blessed far more than I deserve. It's focusing on positive experiences. And there's a neuroscience out there. If you focus on gratitude, it changes like your brain waves. It makes you more optimistic as opposed to pessimistic. And I start my day writing 3 things that I am grateful for. I am grateful for, and then I also write the second part of it, because. And so that's one of the first cornerstones of care. You want to first have to take care of yourself first through gratitude. Pardon me. You also want to embody the concept of self-talk. And self-talk is that intimate conversation that we have with ourselves. It's that internal narrative that shapes your reality. It's interesting because by the time we're 13 years old, we have received thousands of negative impressions per day. I'm not good at math. I'm not a good public speaker. I'm not good at school. I'm this, I'm that. And we confuse positive self-talk with negative self-talk. When we find ourselves doing things well, we should be saying, that's like me. When we find ourselves doing things not up to standards, instead of beating ourselves up and falling into negative self-talk, we want to say, that's not like me. And I actually write down in my planner every day something regarded to self-talk. I am worthy of success. I accept myself exactly as I am without judgment. I am resilient. Having these positive messages every day through gratitude, through self-talk, through well-being, living that happy, healthy life, and then mindfulness. Mindfulness is simply paying attention to the present moment without judgment, taking a walk, listening to a song, living in the moment. If you focus on care first, this is how you can help. This is the first steps in finding what lies beyond your best and really achieving human flourishing. So that was a bit of a long-winded answer there, but it's something that is just so at the heart of what I put out there in the universe.
Yeah. I do want to kind of pause though and kind of maybe reel back a little bit, because one of the things that I've kind of been exploring this week for myself is the notion that when you are trying to live or starting to live at a higher vibration in life, you have the mental space and ability to sit down and do those exact exercises that you're speaking of, thinking, doing gratitude journals or positive reinforcement. But that means that your mental state in that moment has to have some form of clarity to allow the space to do that. For someone that is so caught up with the stresses of life and in the moment of survival mode, what would you say is this is the very first most basic step to start reprogramming your brain in the path of what you're talking about?
It's to acknowledge that you are safe, you are healthy, you have worth, just to acknowledge that, take off the pressure. When I'm talking about change here, I am not talking about quantum change. I am talking about incremental change at first. Character is defined as the ability to carry out a worthy decision once the emotion of that decision is passed. You have many listeners that listen to your podcast. And if you take away one thing out of each podcast and just implement it, that's a good starting point. I don't believe any guest is asking your listeners, oh, just do all of this day one. I don't want it to be overwhelming. I am just suggesting these principles to make it very, very simple. Okay, what is one thing that I could do to really, I'm in survival mode, like you mentioned. What can I'm burning at both, burning at both ends. I can't even think here.
Yeah.
Just take a moment of mindfulness. Take a moment of mindfulness. Just say stop. Let me take a walk. Let me smell the air and touch, a leaf, or just listen to the sounds. Living in the moment lets the things go. It could be that simple as a starting point. I don't, the goal here is not to overwhelm anybody with saying you must do this, you must do that, because you just won't achieve it. So that to me is let's take a baby step here. What is something we can really start with? And it may be, for some people, it might be gratitude, to start their day with three things they're grateful for. For somebody else, it might be just having positive self-talk, just acknowledging something positive that they can buy into. Maybe it's just that taking that walk or listening to a record, or an album or a song, just living in the present moment without judgment. It could be that simple.
Yeah. So you're kind of, what I'm hearing is that you're saying, okay, you have to care for yourself, then you can care for others, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then maybe it's a domino effect. That's what I'm kind of seeing, at least as I'm thinking about your caring, connecting, creating, and celebrating. So like the connection piece, can you unpack that a little bit?
Sure. When we talk about connecting, it's about building and maintaining social bonds. It's about trust and community through giving and connection. And I've said this before, people don't care how much you know, they want to know how much you care. It's about building relationships. It's about donations of the heart. There is a saying that the fragrance of the rose lingers on the hand of the giver. The reciprocity rule. When you give of yourself, that's when you truly give, when you expect nothing in return. And, at the cornerstone, a lot of times, at the cornerstone of connection is that of trust. And there is a wonderful site called trustedadvisor.com. And I have no financial stake in the site or whatever. When you go to the site, trustedadvisor.com, you could take the Trusted Advisor assessment. It's free. There's no cost. If you want to take a full-blown one, you can pay for it, but it's free, this assessment. And what it is, the Trusted Advisor quotient is simply this. In your numerator of the formula is credibility, reliability, and intimacy. And in the denominator of the formula is that of self-orientation. So let's think about that for a moment. For you to connect with me, I need to be a man of my word. I need to be trustworthy for you to trust me. So when we speak of credibility, we're talking about, I know what I'm talking about. I have the goods. When I'm speaking of reliability, you can count on me to do what I say I'm going to do when I'm going to do it. And intimacy, I can be trusted with, confidential information or sensitive information. That's all critical stuff. Like I mentioned, in the denominator, self-orientation, is the focus more on yourself or is the focus on others? When the focus is on others, your trustworthiness goes up. When you focus on yourself, if you have a hidden agenda here, then your trust quotient goes down. And so trust is the cornerstone of a meaningful connection.
Okay, so let's unpack creating.
So creating, I started with care because we said it has to start with self first. Then you can build relationships. Creating, this is where you're fostering growth. This is where you're devoted to mastery, to learning, through overcoming challenges and what have you. This is where you write your daily tasks down, and I would limit it to three, believe it or not. I would have a master task list, but I would select the three most critical ones for the day. It's about time management. I've spent many years in the time management industry with Franklin Covey and with day timers. And in every day we have discretionary time and we have non-discretionary time. Discretionary time is the time we have control of. Non-discretionary time is the time that we're committed to, meetings or other things. And so we have to be aware of that. We could overbook. That causes stress and anxiety. We just don't want to do that. We want to work smart. It's okay to work hard, but it's really good to work smart. So having your master list, selecting the critical things for the day, practicing effective time management, and also under creating, I would say, is your daily learning rituals. Devoting at least 10 minutes per day to growing, whether it's micro learning, whatever the case may be, listening to books on tape, listening to the Page and Will podcast. That is all part of daily learning rituals. And so, with creating, what I also do here, and I mentioned before, I don't want this to be overwhelming for the listeners here, but I am a big fan of writing things down. I do keep a journal. And I'm a big fan of moleskin journals, the hardcover, binders that you could take notes. And I'm also a big fan of the ones it sounds like you say lectern, but it's really pronounced Leuchtturm is how you actually pronounce it, those German journals. And what I actually do in my journal, I create 4 components and I label each component: care, connect, create, and celebrate. And I just jot things down in each component. And at the end of the day, I make sure to celebrate. And it's really that simple. If you are an iPad user, there are wonderful note-taking apps. Once again, I get no financial stake. I've used them all. They're all good. Good Notes, a wonderful app. Note Shelf 3, another wonderful app. Notability. And what's great about them is they've also encompassed AI. So as you're writing your stuff every day, your care, your connect, your celebrate, and so forth, you can have summarizations and trends and see what's going through AI summary analysis. Wow, boy, that will really help you flourish. There's all, and if you have the techies out there, once again, no financial stake, but there is a wonderful app out there called Rosebud, which is available in the App Store. And a lot of the things you could do in an actual, paper-based journal, you could do in Rosebud, and then it'll do summaries, through the use of AI and so forth. So there's many tools of technology out there to help you. It's just taking the moment to start. And that's the biggest thing. Procrastination is the enemy. It doesn't mean that you're not, good or strong or smart. Just don't get overwhelmed. Just take 5 minutes to start and then celebrate. I'm going to take 5 minutes to start. I'm going to pull out my journal and pick 4 quadrants like Dr. Joe said. It's that simple.
Yeah. So I'm going to shift gears a little bit, but it's kind of in the same realm. So we were kind of talking about caring, right? And you have to care for yourself and then you can care for others. So what would you say some practical strategies HR could use to foster environments where employees feel like they truly belong and they can thrive, including themselves too? Let's not forget, we are humans too.
Right. Well, a really good question here. So let's play a game. Let's play a game here. We'll call this the workplace well-being game. And let's brainstorm together, and I'll start it. And I'll just mention a program or an activity that HR can lead, and we can worry about what quadrant it belongs in first. HR should lead or create or what's the word I'm looking for? I'll use the word lead. Wellness programs or create an avenue for wellness programs. That's one thing to promote workplace well-being. All right, your turn. All right, come on. We're practicing workplace well-being. What else can HR do?
And we're talking specifically about in the realm of workplace well-being.
Yeah. Let's put our heads together because wellness programs to me, would be one in not just all, but it's one of the strategies that we could put out there. That would fall in the dimension of care. What about a recognition program? HR departments and professionals can lead a recognition program or at least spearhead a recognition program. That would fall under the quadrant of what? Would that be care? Would that be connect? Would that be create? Or would that be celebrate?
All?
It could be all. And maybe some folks will say, oh, that's celebrate. It could be all. It most certainly could be all.
Yeah.
What about flexible work arrangements would be another one.
True.
Career pathways, under the creating and growing. Performance management systems. Mentorship could even be another. Connecting individual goals to organizational purpose to really have that sense of purpose, that sense of being. I know that certain organizations will promote volunteer opportunities where you can take a day off with pay and volunteer in the community. Talk about human flourishing. Talk about promoting wellness, team building activities, collaborative work environments, an employee awareness program. Listen, I don't have all the answers out there. and it's no weakness to reach out to somebody and say, listen, I got more on my plate. And you alluded to this earlier, Will. I got more on my plate that I can handle. I'll be straight up with you two. Most recently, I was out of balance. And I felt, oh my God, I'm gonna appear on this podcast, and I was out of balance. This is like I'm an imposter. But here's what happened. My long-haired dachshund Gilligan is my best friend. My wife and I don't have any children. Our pets are our kids. And Gilligan has a heart condition we've just been monitoring with drugs, but he just took a downturn about a month ago. I'm sorry so that we almost lost him. And I had to take him to the local vet and then take him to an emergency vet where he was there for 3 days on oxygen. It was really touch go. He's on different medications now. And I thought, wow, am I an imposter here? No, it impacts me too. I just had to step back and breathe. I just had to step back and breathe and say, okay, it's okay to be out of balance in the short term. I'll be in balance in the long term. Let's acknowledge this. I'm going to get through it. Let's breathe. Everything will be okay. It will work out, and it always does. But, as we're building this list, we could have so many other things on this list from, positive onboarding experiences to milestone recognition, tuition reimbursement, all these different types of things that human resource departments lead and really spearhead and are the architects of are all critical components, in terms of this whole concept of care, connect, creating, and celebrating, and in the context of human flourishing.
Yeah, and I think also for contextual reference, being able to create a community within the HR world is always something that I gravitate towards. And recently we were just actually this morning talking more about community in that sense of setting goals for the following year and whatnot.
We just did a 3-hour workshop,
Yeah.
so we are pretty tired at this point. So I'm so glad that we're talking about this, but it helps the conversation today.
For sure. And that whole concept of being able to create a community or force ourselves to create a community, because a lot of times it goes back to the whole we're all waiting for someone else to do it and then never gets done, unfortunately.
Understand. I hear you.
Because somebody has to take the burden of pushing forward and getting the ball rolling. But allowing ourselves to create a community for HR people, which is what we're trying to accomplish, obviously, with this podcast and the activities that stem from it, for us to get that connection with other HR people that are going through the same experiences that we're going through. And sometimes it is about we care a lot.
Mhm.
We lack the connection because of the nature
Mhm.
of our jobs, and unfortunately, sometimes amongst
Right.
each other,
Yeah.
which in turn leads into maybe a lack of creativity. Because if you're
Mhm.
feeling burnt out, or I hate reusing that word so much, but if you're feeling in a space where you're tired and exhausted, and
Right.
honestly, into the worst case scenario, depressed at times. I mean, I've gone through
Yeah.
episodes
Sure.
of depression and like questioning what am I doing in my life,
Ah,
and things like that. Then you lack the creativity, and then it's really hard to celebrate because you're like, what exactly is there to celebrate? Even though, again, drowning in a cup of water,
right.
there are so many things around us that are worthy of celebration. But at the same time, when you're so consumed in that moment, it's really hard to see through the mud, see through the muck and
Mhm.
the weeds, to be able to find that reset moment of all these things around us. But a lot of it because our jobs, we're in our jobs 8 to 10 hours a day,
Mhm.
5 days a
Mhm.
week, and sometimes, if you're on call, and an on call HR person, you're 7 days a week, depending on what's going on in your
Right.
facility and your
I
company.
hear you.
It's very easy to isolate yourself, and almost self sabotage in that sense of you're creating the environment yourself that alienates
Mhm.
yourself from that connection and other people that might care for you.
Well, because
So
you're tired.
yeah,
You're
yeah,
tired, like you feel like you kind of don't have the energy to give to
Right.
anything else outside of, work
Right.
and family. And so when
Sure.
it comes to community and friendships, boy, oh
Yeah.
boy, I mean, that takes a lot of intentionality, and that's a struggle for a lot of people. You're like, how am I supposed to do this when I'm totally
Right.
exhausted? Yeah.
Right. And I hear you. Um, I've put this in simple terms that I felt I could, in terms of care, connect, create, and celebrate. I don't believe anybody disagrees with what we talked about with care and connect. We know that relationships are important, and we know that we have to do things, and we have a lot of things we're responsible for. And you said sometimes we're just too even tired to celebrate.
yeah.
Uh, it there's always somebody else out there for you. You are hopefully connecting HR folks with other HR folks, but at the very least the universe is out there.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be many different religions or spirituality or whatever, but there's always the universe. The universe is listening to you,
Yeah.
and it's okay to ask for help. That's not a weakness. It's okay to take a time out and recharge. It's okay to not say, "Oh, when I have to celebrate it, it must be something big or quantum." No, you made it through your task list for the day, or you made it two things off your task list to today that were really critical. Go and celebrate.
Go to
That's
freaking
really
Dairy Queen and get some ice cream that you've been wanting all freaking week.
agree. Totally
Do
agree.
you want Dairy
And
Queen?
it's just the practice of acknowledging, we
Yeah.
are human, and like I even mentioned before, how it really threw me for a loop when my dog was recently sick, but really being immersed in this stuff, I was able to really, break out of it real quick. And interesting enough, actually, my good friend Allison and I met. We're working on the book, and I said, I have this upcoming thing. I feel like an imposter. I'm going to be telling everybody, and here I'm struggling, with the dog's illness, and it really's got me down. And we just talked, and the mere fact that I was just able to talk to her and her to listen authentically without judgment, and just say, I hear you. And the good thing about it, Joe, is that you could share how you got through that with others. And that's what the goal is here, in many different respects. Hopefully, the listeners will something will resonate, and they'll say, hey, I'm going to do this. There's a lot of the stuff we talked about here is backed by science. It's proven. We just have to start. And just starting is the key. As you were talking, Will, I was having an aha moment there. And the aha moment was, how do sometimes you can be burned out, and sometimes it may just be the culture. It may be an individual culture that we really need to look at. I had the great pleasure for several years of doing consulting work with a company by the name of Univest, and it's a financial institution. And on the first day of orientation, all the new hires get a little pocket foldable document that you can put in your wallet, and it's called the Univesse Way. And it's their 18 fundamentals. And you open the thing up, and if I may just be so bold, I'm holding my Univesse Way thing right in front of me. I'm not going to read the deep dive behind each one, but let me just share what shapes the culture of Univesse.
Before we wrap up, we want to give a special thank you to two of our sponsors. First, we'd like to once again thank our launch sponsor, the Bring Disc to Life community at confidentcommunicator.com, for their generous support. We also want to thank one of our founding supporter sponsors, Chain Solutions. They have believed in the Beyond HR podcast since day one, and we are proud to have them alongside us. Chain Solutions has been a trusted name and background screening for just over 20 years. They are accredited, use secure mobile first technology, and offer incredible responsive support with an average response time of just 18 minutes. If you're in need of a background screening partner who gets it right, fast and secure, Chain Solutions is one to know. And just for our listeners, they are waiving their usual $250 setup fee. Just mention you heard about them on the Beyond HR podcast. Thanks again to Chain Solutions for being a part of our journey.
They're 18 fundamentals. Always do the right thing, have a growth mindset, practice servant leadership, invest in relationships, deliver exceptional service, comply with regulations, don't be an energy vampire, be nice, honor commitments, collaborate, attack the problem, not the person, give back, provide solutions, assume positive intent, listen generously, speak straight, celebrate success, and have fun. Now, if you want to talk about human flourish, if you want to talk about care, connect, create, and celebrate, Univest does it. And it's not just a one and done. They give this thing out and it's built around the culture of the organization.
Wow.
There are contests, there are, things where they demonstrate, there's awards, you demonstrated with this principle, or kudos to this, or you guessed this was an example of this, you get some points toward Univest gear and so forth. This is such a phenomenal cultural thing crafted by the HR department with senior leadership that permeates the organization.
Yeah, if you could share that, actually with us, I would love to share it with our listeners, because it's honestly, even though it's created for an organization, every principle on that list is something that's easily applicable to life in general.
Sure, I will make sure I get this to you guys. Absolutely.
Because as you're reading each one, and we've made reference to this book before on one of the previous episodes. This book called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. It's funny because a lot of the things as you were reading them, in my mind, that book came to mind immediately, and the four agreements, each one aligned to one of those points that you were talking about, and how we should navigate the world and our day-to-day interactions and everything else in between. So, if you could definitely share that with us, I would love to be able to post it up on our
I'll make sure
website.
I scan it and I'll get it up to you guys to
That'd be
share
awesome.
and so forth. And yeah, absolutely. But that has stayed with me. And like I said, I have been blessed far more than I deserve. I have worked with the most amazing companies and institutions, whether in higher education or time management companies, or doing work for Univest. I've been so blessed. The people that I've come across, and the people I've worked with, and the people that I've worked for, and all the many learners that have crossed my path. And so, really good stuff. And I'll be more than glad to share that with you.
Awesome.
Yeah, that would be great. So I feel like, at this point, I feel like it would be good to talk about this. So if listeners could take away one powerful insight from you, it doesn't have to even be anything that we talked about today, but just something that could inspire them to live or work with more purpose, what would it be?
One critical takeaway would simply be, you are enough. You are enough. You have the skills, you have the ability, you are enough. Don't beat yourself up. I always feel that technology isn't good or bad. It's how we use technology that makes it good or bad. We often compare ourselves to others in technology on social media. You are enough. You got the goods. you got all the skills. You're enough, and you can accomplish, really some truly incredible things when you have enough reasons. And just start. Hopefully, there's something of today's information, that resonates with you, that you say, wow, I'm going to really just, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take 5 minutes and do this. And remember, habit doesn't happen overnight. You have to do things 21 times for it to become habit.
Yeah.
And, so that, you are enough would really be the biggest takeaway. Don't beat yourself up for the things you're not doing, or you're stressed out, or what. You're enough. You're going to figure it out. Take these lessons, take these learnings, all the things that you get from all the guests on the podcast, and pick a thing here and there and implement it for 21 days. And I'm telling you, it will work. It'll happen.
And one of the things that I would love to, with your permission, kind of expand on and add on to what you just said is the fact that you don't have to have everything figured out to do it.
Right.
That's been one of the things that Source and Univesse has been smacking me in the face about a lot recently, is that I kind of have been in the mindset of, well, I'm not the expert, I'm not the subject matter expert in this, or it's not something that I have too much experience on. And it's like, you know what, just freaking do it, because the action of doing it is going to be that action that helps you learn and develop. And you know what, if you mess up and you fall on your face, guess what? Clean yourself back up and get up and keep going.
Agreed. And Will, you know what I call that? I call that the get ready to go. I get ready to go.
Yeah.
And I'm not quite ready yet, but I'm getting ready. Well, I'm almost ready. And then finally, and it's just sometimes fear, it's just fear. We didn't talk about procrastination, but it's fear.
Yeah.
A lot of us are high achievers, and we get paralyzed by too much information. You have enough already. You keep on figuring, I got to learn more, and I got to learn more, and I got to get this, and no, you got enough.
Yeah.
If I may bring it back to a college example, I shepherd my students with their student projects. They have to investigate a business and by the way, I don't know if I mentioned it, but you mentioned that I'm a program lead and assistant professor of business, and it's actually at Harrisburg University of Science and Technology, which is in central Pennsylvania. We're a leading STEM school, but I lead them in investigating a business, project, problem, and that they have to investigate and research. And research is daunting for students because they want to try to know everything. And I say, just realize you reach the point of saturation. Don't keep on trying to learn. You'll never know everything. You have a good picture of it at this point in time. You don't have to keep on getting ready to go. You're ready now. Yeah. Don't be paralyzed by the analysis. You got enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes we just do that. We say, it's got to be perfect. There's no place. What we put out there is going to be good. Trust that it will. You're devoting your time to it. And so forth. It'll be good. You can't know everything. You can't do everything. I remember taking a class many years ago as a student, and I remember the professor said, when you focus on everything, you focus on nothing. You can't do everything. You can't. Even companies, when they focus on points of differentiation or core competencies, you can't focus on everything. What are the three most critical things that are differentiators out there? It's enough. That's enough. And when I said before, you are enough, folks. Believe in yourself. I know it seems trite, but believe in yourself. You have the skills, you have the knowledge. You're going to get it done.
Yeah.
Work smart. It's okay to work hard, but work smart along the way as well.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that you guys are working on the book. Is there anything else that you have going on right now in your
yes,
path of creation?
Well, we're down to the last 5 weeks of classes. So if you or any of your listeners want to help me grade papers, that's always welcome.
Sounds daunting.
And I'm actually working on an initiative for the university, or at least investigating it at this point in time, about a sales academy. So that might be right around the corner as well, that we offer a sales academy for salespeople, preferably focused, on the newer salesperson at this point in time and skills to be successful. So those are some of the things that are on my plate right now.
Very
The
cool.
book obviously is really important, and it's really we are just so committed to it. And Allison and I just work so well together. We met at an HR conference at Harrisburg University. We hit it off. We knew we had to author a book together, and how we see life, how we see the calling to help others. It's just so compatible and so well aligned.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just really good stuff. So those are some of the things that I'm working on right now. And I got to tell you, there ought to be a law against it. I get paid to be a college professor. I get paid to be a corporate training and development professional and
That's
a
awesome.
keynote speaker and so forth. There ought to be a law against it. I get paid to do what I love. I mean, it's so great. Like, at the end of a semester, and I do all these celebrations all throughout the semester, but at the end of the semester, graduating students, I put together things and together for them and so forth. But when they take the time to write a handwritten card to me and give it to me, that means so. And I have a whole file devoted to that. That's
awesome.
that's part of my celebration. If you talk about a quadrant, if I'm feeling down at times, I pull open those cards, and I start saying, look at the lives that I've impacted, and it just means, and everybody has a story. It just means so much to me to make a positive difference in people's lives.
That's awesome. And how can folks connect with you?
The
You
best
are
way, yeah, the
LinkedIn?
best way to connect with me just would be on LinkedIn.
Okay.
You could find me on LinkedIn. And if you'd be so kind, if you want to connect, just let me know that you found me. If you just customize your invite, you could put a little note, say, "Hey, I heard you on the on Paige and Will's HR podcast. Love to connect with you." That's what I'll just know. Where the connection is coming from.
Perfect.
Yeah. Well,
Awesome.
thanks so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And I know that, a lot of listeners are going to gain some little tidbit about this that they can put into action, that it's not overwhelming. So I really appreciate you kind of structuring it that way.
I really appreciate that. And I want to thank you. You just thanked me, but the thanking should be coming from me. Thank you both for what you do, because what you do is extremely important out there. What you are doing for the HR profession is extremely important there, because you are building the relationship. Talking about connection, that's what you're doing. Talking about care, that's what you're doing. Talking about celebrating, that's what you're doing. And talking about creating, that's also what you're doing through this podcast. You are embodying, you are displaying, you are just so well aligned to the 4 C's, everything that this podcast is about. So thank you both for what you do.
Thank you for the kind words.
that's
We're
very nice.
doing the best we can to try and build an awesome community, and you're part of that. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond HR podcast. We hope today's episode inspired you to reflect and grow in your own HR journey. Connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Beyond HR Podcast. If you found value here, share it with your fellow HR professionals. Until next time, keep making an impact on yourself.